Ladies and gentlemen, hit subscribe to this channel right now. This is a CNN article. The latest Supreme Court decision helps Trump immeasurably. Hit subscribe. We'll get to that in a second. In Virginia, you have to be a citizen to decide who becomes president. Okay? In the country, you have to be a citizen to decide who becomes president, who becomes senator, who becomes governor. This is not a controversial issue. It's only contentious for Democrats. I have no idea why. That's a rhetorical answer or rhetorical question. Why do Democrats find this to be controversial? Your guess is as good as mine, but hit subscribe to this channel. Ladies and gentlemen, I will have a live stream this evening at about 5 p.m. or so, the second live stream of the day. We'll try to do a third live stream this evening. Let's get started really quickly, though, on President Trump. Amazing responding to Biden's comments, calling Trump supporters, and he did say this, garbage. Okay, that's exactly what Biden said. Let's start. Hit subscribe, and thank you so much. Be here, by the way, November 5th. That will be an historic, wonderful, amazing day. A very important day in U.S. history. I've been telling you for 4 years that President Trump is going to regain the Oval Office. So be here tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen. Be here November 5th, but be here every single day in November and beyond. I'll try to do at least 2. I'll try to do 3 live streams a day. So we'll do a live stream at about 5 and then one possibly at about 10 p.m. Eastern tonight. But we have a goal, by the way, of 5 super chats. We don't have to hit it, but if you want to go ahead and support the channel, we have a 5 super chat goal, and your support is greatly appreciated. Let's get started.
How do you like my garbage truck? This truck is in honor of Kamala and Joe Biden. I just wanted to let you know that 250 million people, that's what I think the real number is for making America great again. 250 million, the real number. They don't think in terms of garbage, okay? They don't use terms like that. And it's a shame. And Joe Biden should be ashamed of himself if he knows what he's even doing. And she should be ashamed because she shouldn't let him do it. She's the vice president, but I assume she's acting as the president. She should never have let that happen. I hope you enjoyed this garbage truck. Thank you very much.
He absolutely did get into the garbage truck in a manner that was not a problem. Like, he got in and he was totally he got in, it wasn't a problem at all, and like, it took him a second to get into the garbage truck. The stairs were steep, and the same pundits would have probably the exact same time getting into that garbage truck. The only thing that happened was he, like, for a split second missed the handle, then got the handle and went up. I'm not sure. Definitely Biden, don't think he could have done the same thing. Harris, I'm not sure she could have gotten up the garbage truck. And yes, I do think that this is very accurate. The Supreme Court decision in Virginia basically gives Trump an enormous victory. And here's why. There's a likelihood that all of the numerous battleground states, 1 or 2 or 3, possibly go to the Supreme Court because of challenges from President Trump's legal team. That's exactly why I think this Virginia decision is such a huge victory for Trump. Okay, this Virginia decision right here, it puts Trump in the driver's seat to defeat Harris. This is a huge, monumental decision. Essentially, he's already victorious just from this Supreme Court decision, in my humble opinion, ladies and gentlemen. Let's continue.
So, look, the president wanted to clarify because he understood that what he may have said he understood that what he was saying was being taken out of context. So he wanted to be very, very clear about what he was trying to say.
The context was literally Biden calling Trump supporters garbage.
And I just read that out once over. You all have the tweet or the statement that's on X. If you want to read it right now, feel free to do so. And he was talking about hateful rhetoric, and we've called out hateful rhetoric from here. We have. Obviously, this hateful rhetoric was about a particular community, a community that
She's referring to a joke from a comedian, not from anything Trump said. And again, the deceit is unbelievable. Biden's press secretary is saying that Biden didn't call Trump supporters garbage. He did. Then what took place was, they're trying to say, well, he didn't call supporters garbage, and oh, by the way, it was in a response to a comedian's joke. That's up for debate whether it wasn't an appropriate joke, no, but it had nothing to do with Trump.
The Puerto Rican community, there are Americans. The president
about the speech because Joe Biden blew it up. Yes. Joe Biden couldn't let Kamala have this moment. This was supposed to be his moment. This was supposed to be his close.
Yep.
And look what he did. He wouldn't let her have it. And this guy's been ruminating about the coup for months. Can't get over it. He's a resentful old man who now Kamala has a restraining order. She's not allowed to go anywhere near this guy. He was within walking distance of this speech. Didn't get a ticket. Ever since he said lock Trump up, they've been quarantining him at the White House.
So he was upset that she was on his lawn.
So she was on his lawn. Get off my lawn. And they hand the guy a laptop for a Zoom. Now, you know what Bidens do with laptops. It's not good. You never want to give a Biden a laptop because it's always going to be a disaster. So he gets out there on the Zoom and just screws up her closing message. And what is she going to do now? Everyone's talking about this. Let's say the nice things. Okay, here are the nice things. Her hair looked great. I agree. The lighting was perfect. But I have sources there that said she walked out on the stage and no one cared. And my source is Johnny. He was at the Ellipse. And she's talking about there was 100,000 people there. He said there was 30. And you know how they got 30, Tyrus?
Buses.
Bus lists.
Wow.
He overheard these two women talking about, are you on the bus list? Oh, I'm on the bus list. And so what they do, if you're a government worker in Washington, you get on a bus list, they have your cell, they have your address, and then you just say yes, and then the buses come in and they pick you up and they bring you to political rallies. That's how they get people in the stands for this.
By the way, the Jim Jordan versus Mayorkas lawsuit, the update is, they've subpoenaed documents. So Jim Jordan is demanding documents from Mayorkas on Biden's handling of the Texas border crisis. That's National Review. So a lot of these, when Trump wins, and he will win, it's almost certain that he will win. There's no logical or rational chance that Harris wins. The pundits or the professors or the prognosticators or the people predicting Harris winning are going to, the cognitive dissonance will be interesting. They're going to finally have to admit that the country wanted Trump and that Trump is far more popular than they ever thought nationally. Let's continue, ladies and gentlemen.
The two pillars of her speech were ridiculous. One, Trump's a fascist. Two, she's going to bring the country together and solve problems.
But
two biggest lies anyone's ever heard.
Mm-hmm. Dana, you've been on the other side of this. You've been in the political war rooms and stuff like that. Does this sound like a team that's winning, or is this panic mode?
Well, I agree. If her speech was that great, we would have been leading with it in the A block.
Yes.
What happened is that Joe Biden stepped on it and killed her momentum, and I'm sure she's furious about it, but trying to make, lemonades out of lemon. But the thing is,
the question, ladies and gentlemen, is why did Biden abdicate or allow Harris to become the nominee? Biden was supposed to be the nominee. Was he not? Wasn't Biden supposed to be the nominee, ladies and gentlemen? He was supposed to be the nominee. And he won his primary. Didn't Biden win his primary? This is what I don't understand about Democrats. They pontificate about democracy and the rule of law. They have zero semblance of meritocracy within the Democratic primary. Also, there was two attempts, one devastating attempt on Trump's life that took the life of a firefighter. And that's nefarious alone, but it's so bizarre that media didn't even care. There's zero investigative journalism at the Washington Post and New York Times or the Atlantic. I mean, is there any reporter or journalist that cares about what happened to Trump, that there was an attempt on his life and another human being lost his life protecting his family? I mean, is there any reporter or journalist anywhere on the left that cares? The same people who focus on one day in January and ignore an entire summer of billions in property damage, thousands of law enforcement officials throughout the country injured. That's a fact, because it went on the entire summer. And it's like, this is why 20 to 30% of Americans, this is why about 70 to 80% of Americans don't trust media.
like, if that's the easiest thing to invite him to.
Kamala backed Biden on everything. She supported his
speaking opportunity, but sir, you get to sit right here and watch. That would have been a nice thing to do. Instead, he's on the Zoom, ruining her whole thing.
Joe Biden finally said what he and Kamala really think of our supporters. He called them garbage.
There's been a lot of question about whether this really matters as much as the original garbage conversation that a comedian had on stage at Madison Square Garden. That was a comedian. Almost nobody knew who he was. They couldn't even make the connection with Tom Brady's roast. They didn't remember him, apparently. This is a sitting president of the United States saying that half the voting public.
By the way, in that clip right there, did you see President Trump just get into the vehicle here?
Is garbage.
He gets into the vehicle, and I did a whole lot of replays of this video. It's like, what's the big deal? They're so desperate to try to turn Trump into Biden, and God bless Biden. Like, you know what? I mean, trying to be respectful as possible. You're talking about a human being that the Democratic Party literally removed from the campaign, they removed from his candidacy. This man who, in front of the world, debating Trump, could not speak in a coherent manner, could not, looked like there were physical and cognitive issues. And again, I feel bad for Biden. I'm trying to be as respectful as possible. But their entire lives, Democrats and pundits are devoted to, look at Trump. He couldn't get into the garbage truck. Well, not only did he get into the garbage truck, but it was like a split second where he couldn't grab the handle. That happens to anyone. That's like not even that big of a deal. That's not Biden slurring his speech or like falling down, steps going into Air Force One or like a bicycle. I mean, it's like the absurd leap of logic to try to turn Trump into Biden. It's just, they're grasping at straws now.
That's different. That's bigger. And to me, it has legs different from deplorables because of the timing of it, the last 7 days or so in the election process, with a candidate we don't know that much about, his vice president. And now he's starting to try to define the opposition with words like that, kind of stepping not on her, but over her. Disrespectful. She has to talk it back. He's taken some of the shine out of her closing arguments. I mean, it's a lot. And I think it matters because he's the current president.
Well, this is a rite of passage, it seems, for Democratic elites to smear people that disagree with them, whether it was Obama smearing Republicans as bitter clingers, whether it's Hillary smearing Trump supporters back in 2016 as deplorables, and then Biden coming out of the woodwork and coming out of hibernation to say people that support Trump are garbage. But
when he talks about hibernation, everyone knows. I mean, you can look at the picture. Everyone knows that we haven't truly had a traditional president for the past 4 years, especially for the past 6 months. Where has Biden been? Why isn't Harris campaigning with Biden? Because she's embarrassed. Because Democrats are embarrassed. That's not a slight, or that's not being disrespectful to Biden. That's being there. It's the Democratic Party and Biden and Harris who are being disrespectful to the country. You nominated Joe Biden. Why is he not running against Trump? He won his primary. If your rebuttal is, well, we can do whatever we want within the political party, it's not part of the Constitution, then why have a convention? Why did Harris even speak at a convention if there's zero semblance of meritocracy? Just simply tell everyone you can choose whomever you want and do away with the primary. What is the point of having this charade or farce? You cheated Bernie Sanders. They still haven't admitted, even Bernie Sanders never admitted that he was cheated, which says a lot about Bernie Sanders. But let's continue.
But you got to step back at it and say, you know, this is blowing up in their face. And it's kind of poetic justice because Kamala's there. They do this massive speech on the ellipse, massive production value to try to have a closing argument. And she's there trying to say, and look, it's not sincere because she believes the same that Biden and Obama, Hillary do. But she's trying to say, if you don't vote for me, I reach out my hand. I want to work with everyone. And she's trying to do that message. And so as she's doing that, here comes old Joe blundering into the scene, now saying that all the Trump supporters are garbage, totally undercutting her at that key moment in the race. And, you know, she had opportunities to distance herself from Joe Biden's administration. I mean, obviously she's Veep, but she could have said she disagrees with the border policy. She disagrees with 13 Americans being killed in Afghanistan. And yet she says there's not a single thing that comes to mind that she would have done different. And so these guys.
Now, the Virginia Supreme Court, the reason that decision is so monumental for Trump, and it basically gives Trump the victory, is that let's just say, I think Trump's not going to need one or two states last second to win. I think it's going to be a resounding victory, but he'll be up. He'll be up that night. So November 5th, he'll be up. What happens is Democrats, and this is why it's so important, the Virginia victory is so important, ladies and gentlemen, basically gives Trump a second term in the Supreme Court. That victory is so important because he'll be up the first night. Okay, he's going to be up the first night. And Democrats are going to say, oh, there's democracy. We can come back because you know democracy, as they try desperately to prevent Virginia from ensuring only citizens decide the outcome. But what takes place is he's up. If Democrats are going to rely on the Supreme Court to ensure victory in contentious battleground states, they've just lost. And that's why it's so important. That's why it basically gives Trump a second term.
Guys are stepping in it, and I think it's going to end up making a difference.
You know, that's such a great point, because right now she's bitterly clinging to Biden. She was, you're right, given opportunity after opportunity to create some distance with Joe. And so she walked into this speech last night, basically Joe Biden in a pantsuit. So when something like this, as devastating as this, comes down the pipeline, where she needs distance, she's just right here, just hugging this guy, and it doesn't pass the smell test that all of a sudden, oh, now she disagrees. You mentioned poetic justice. I call it karma, whatever you want to call it. Do you believe in karma, Governor? Because they have not run an honorable or noble campaign.
Well, that's exactly true. I mean, I think you look at what they've done from the beginning. I mean, even more recently, their closing argument seemed to be that Donald Trump is like Hitler, like a fascist. He was president for 4 years, guys. People can watch and see what happened.
Donald Trump is the least like that monster, that the embodiment of evil, authoritarian, totalitarian despot. He's Trump signed prison reform legislation and is the anti-war choice. He removed Americans from never-ending military conflict, does not want to engage in wars, and he signed prison legislation, prison reform legislation. So I don't think those totalitarians and despots and authoritarians did that. If you just focus on even rhetoric, the media has taken and spun his words completely out of context and made absurd correlations when Democrats say the same types of things. But you have to be a complete imbecile and ignorant. You just have to be ignorant of history. The people claiming that Trump is this authoritarian or that tyrant or that despot, they're ignorant of history. And that's really the problem nowadays. You have this mass ignorance of history. People try to correlate modern day events. They could be terrible, they could be horrible, and label them just the same as, I'm not even going to get into it, okay, but just the same as what took place in this time period or that time period. And the problem is you're showing your ignorance when you do that. Instead of trying to simply defend your position from a moral vantage point, a person that really doesn't have the moral basis because it's complicated, the situation is definitely not like years past, to try to bolster your moral claim, you then say, well, this event is just like that, or this person is just like this horrible historical person. It doesn't work that way. You'd have to be ignorant of history, like I said, to make any correlation that doesn't exist or absurd leap of logic.
I didn't see that happen in those 4 years, but what they're doing is they're really stirring up, I think, a lot of division in this country. And think about it. If they are convincing you as a voter that American democracy will end if Donald Trump is president, you can see why you have some of the problems that we have and some of the things that have been stirred up amongst the populace. So I think it's been a very dangerous game that they're playing. I think it is born out of desperation. I don't think it's going to work, but they know exactly what they're doing.
I think it's become very apparent that Kamala Harris does not want conservatives, does not want Republicans, doesn't even really want to have conversations with us in Washington, let alone the American people and your average American. Regardless of what she says, she's not from a middle-class family. She's been out of touch and in D.C. for far too long, and she's expecting Americans to trust that she'll fix the very country that she's been responsible for breaking over the last 4 years. So to put it in perspective, Laura, what you're seeing and what you're hearing is the message of a dying campaign. The reason why President Trump is so positive is there's one point in a campaign, and every single person who's ever run for office will tell you, you know when you're going to win, and I think he knows he's going to win. We just need people to show up and vote. But Kamala Harris knows she's losing. Her messaging is not resonating with the American people, and you're seeing that live in real time.
It's very hard to believe that There wasn't even an apology from Joe Biden toward Kamala Harris for what was said. And, you say Kamala Harris distanced herself from these remarks, but she didn't really do much distancing, and she made a false claim saying she doesn't like to disparage voters who aren't voting for her. The problem is that so many people in her campaign, and she herself, have spent much of the last few months calling people who don't support her campaign racist, bigots. Last week, they were to distance yourself from President Biden when so much of your campaign messaging also seems to be similar.
So just a short time after that comment was made, which we showed earlier in the show, by the current president about supporters of Trump being garbage, this was the reaction on stage in Allentown, Pennsylvania from President Trump. Watch.
Garbage, I think, is worse, right? Please forgive him, for he not knoweth what he said. These people, it's terrible, terrible. Terrible to say a thing like that, but he really doesn't know. Honestly, he doesn't.
Could you imagine if there was a soundbite of Trump calling Democrats garbage? It would be, oh my God, this tyrant of years past said the same type of thing. He's echoing this rhetoric. That's what Democrats, or media, that's what, disingenuous journalists do. Trump echoes. That they use words like collusion, echoes. These are very broad, ambiguous terms. Democrats reside within semantic murkiness or ambiguity when they talk about Trump. He suggested. So when they know he didn't tell anyone to do anything nutty, but he suggested, this. Trump suggests this. He colluded. He echoes. It's and that's why nobody trusts media.
But in reality, President Biden, as you just referred to in terms of the Biden-Harris administration, has been going after Trump supporters for a really long time. Here's a quick montage to remind people. Number one.
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans.
MAGA Republicans.
Represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
Look at the red background. And it's they have the audacity to put Marines in the background and this red background, and they have just the audacity to kind of, and this is the same political party. This is the type of this actually is the type of thing that an authoritarian or despot would do. You have a red background where Biden's giving a speech about the dangers of Trump. And it's nobody's buying it. Trump is far more popular and admired and beloved than Democrats would ever think or admit.
This MAGA threat is a threat to the brick and mortar of our democratic institutions.
This, by the way, from a man who won a primary and was ousted. And of course, he's talking about democratic institutions.
But it's also a threat to the character of our nation. He talks about the blood of America as being poisoned.
Show your daughter how much
was 8 years ago. This is a very curious closing message, though. You look at what you just showed a few minutes ago. Donald Trump says his closing message is, I'll fix it. That kind of gives people an idea of why they might vote for him. Her closing message is, you're a horrible person if you don't vote for me. And I'm not sure. I mean, it might work. We'll have to find out next week. But it doesn't seem to be as hopeful or joyful as she claims she wants to be.
Yeah, why do you think we saw that shift? Because she was actually at her highest point right out of her convention, and right after we saw what I call the big switcheroo, the switch of the candidates, that was her highest point. So why do you think that she has gravitated to this sort of darker message in the later months?
Well, campaigns always seem to embody the president.
Ladies and gentlemen, the campaign strategy has shifted because Democrats know they're going to lose. Trump has this. The Supreme Court decision essentially gave him another term. This is huge, ladies and gentlemen. Hit subscribe to this channel. I will be back. I will be back at around 5 p.m. Eastern. So be here at about 5 p.m. Eastern, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you so very, very much. I'm going to start doing more live streams in the morning. And what can I tell you? Be here throughout the month, especially November 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. He'll probably be confirmed as the next president by November 8th. It'll take about 3 days, and I'll be with you those 3 days. God bless you all.